Okay, finally we get back to the envelope, please, at our stone table.
Yeah.
Nice and cool.
Does the bike
That's nicer than home.
Smooth.
the ring?
It's got a lot of
They do.
mass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you want to put your equipment on, with some footers.
Yeah.
and
So what's the question?
isolation. Anyway, the question is, should I leave my equipment on, as in powered up,
Right.
plugged in, always running?
Definitely different schools of thought on this one, because there's plenty of people that don't like leaving their equipment on because of the power consumption, the heat output, the wear on the thing. And there's other people that like leaving it on because they listen to it enough, presumably, and they want it to always be warm.
Warm is
But-
good.
There's some tricks there, right?
Yeah, well,
What if it's a tube amp?
tube amp? Yeah.
Tube amp depends on the design, but some tubes aren't rated to
Yeah,
last
I
that
would-
long.
I wouldn't leave a tube amp on.
Right.
No, general consensus is with amplifiers, a tube-based amplifier, it should be, you should have a line sight of it when it's on. And it's not that usually things go wrong, but they can, and usually
Yeah.
you want to be near the switch to turn it off. And we don't see that too often with headphone amps, but I've seen it with speaker amps. They can be quite eventful when they go up, when a tube fails and there's just
Yeah.
all kinds of things
Yeah.
going on. And typically you'll blow a line fuse or something, but some of this stuff might not have. Some of this stuff, you never know what the vintage is or who made it or et cetera, if it even has a fuse. And, so
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, right. But solid state, especially like DACs and stuff, I leave it on all the friggin' time. My amps, love them on, I mean, if I know I'm not going to be there for
Well,
a
yeah.
week, why bother? Just simply for electrical reasons, like, that lightning storm that came by while you're on vacation, you weren't home,
Right, that's the trick.
Yeah, it's, at that point, you're probably better off unplugging everything
Yeah.
if you
Right.
leave,
Some things actually have physical power switches that
Yeah,
actually
right.
remove power.
Yeah, right, some
Other
don't.
things are a soft switch.
Yeah,
So, yeah, if you're worried about things like that, like if you have really bad electrical service in your area, or for whatever reason you're prone to noise or electrical disturbances, storms, and stuff like
yeah, I
that.
think like Florida, some of the South is prone to a lot of lightning. There's certain areas they know it.
Well, yeah, Florida.
Because things have blown up in the home before. Yeah, those are the places you kind of want to. The safest thing is don't even plug. Just keep it unplugged because that's the ultimate disconnect.
Yeah,
right?
if you don't
can't-
really use it that much, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a big deal.
I know we had a tube preamp in the shop at one time for like 5 or 6 years. And I remember one day one of the tubes failed. It took about 5 years, and it was on a
Yeah.
whole work day every day.
Yeah.
Right.
So it took a long time, but I remember one day just like,
Same at work. I have a 12AU7 base preamp. Home, and I've left it on 5-6 years.
Yeah.
GE tubes, and it
Yeah.
still works. I mean, you could tell it's a slow process, right? But I could tell the highs are a little bit more subdued than they used to be when the tubes
Yeah.
were new. But still, it's probably due for a new set. But anyway, these things, a lot of things. Usually with tube stuff, you might want to check with the manufacturer, just to see what they tell you. But in general, tube amps, no. But solid state, unless it's running so hot that you can barely touch it,
well, yeah,
that's usually not a good idea to leave that kind of stuff on in solid state, because
especially in the summer.
you are going to ultimately over time reduce its lifespan, because it's really, really running hot.
Yeah,
But most of the stuff for headphones, I mean, it's under 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or it's not, as long, though my rule of thumb has always been, if you keep your hand on it, you're good. If you can't,
So the trick with this one is a lot of people like leaving their gear on because they think it sounds better when it's warm, and a lot of times it actually does.
I do.
Depends on what it is, though. Some things don't.
Some things it doesn't
aren't
really
affected
matter.
as much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but plenty of things it actually does. So
Most
that,
are.
Yeah.
Most are. I haven't heard a lot that doesn't vary. I'm trying to think of an example.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
you just
know.
leave everything on.
It'll come to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
The DAC's always on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, always on. I just don't bother. The amps I tend to turn off because I'm not listening to music every night. And I know I do prefer the sound of them when they're warm, the amps and the DACs. And they're just a bit smoother. They have a little bit less edge to them, a little bit. It's really the nature of electronics. It's the nature of gain stages. I think your typical, Class A, B design amplifiers have what they call a crossover distortion. And I don't know, I think for some reason, I think the designers when they tend to adjust these things, when they tend to figure out biasing on the stages, they do it while the unit's warm. In other words, it's adjusted to be played warm. They don't adjust the bias and all that on these stages.
Yeah, operating
course.
temperature.
Coming out of a refrigerator, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
they're assuming you're going to be at minimum room temperature, if not hotter, and whatever their idle temperature is or what they determine. So yeah, so basically they're like when back in the day when we used to fix amplifiers or whatever, worked for Rotel and B&W Bowers and Wilkins, the Rotel stuff, you'd let 100 watt per channel amp. If you were going to do anything with bias settings, you would let it come up to operating temp at least an hour or so, then set bias. You never set it on a cold, and then of course you can turn it off and then let it cool down and bring it back on and make sure the bias is okay cold. But of course these amps are designed not to have a range of bias. They're not designed so you could set the bias so it'll blow up when it's cold or something, or you know what I mean. But it only lets so much of an adjustment range. But the point is that these devices are actually designed to run at operating temperature. So that's pretty much where people should expect for it to sound best too.
Most likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about this briefly in a previous video. Some amps, when it looks like they're powered off, they're actually still at least partially powered on. It depends on the manufacturer, but some they have a soft switch on the front and a physical power switch or a hard switch on the back that actually removes power from
Not
the
really
electronics.
off.
Yeah, so even when they're off, they might actually be partially on, just remain a little bit warm so that it takes less time.
The way you could
before
usually
they come
tell
up.
is put your hand on it.
Yeah.
If it's soft turned off, but it still feels warm, it's trying some juice.
Right.
And it's not really off. Yeah. A lot of stuff doesn't do that now, I think, nowadays because of energy saving
Yeah.
and conservation and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So most of the stuff now is being designed to the new rules,
Well,
Where-
a seemingly unusual thing is the MyTech Brooklyn. It doesn't have a switch.
Yeah.
There's no switch.
Yeah.
It's just you plug it in and then it's on.
Yeah.
There's
So,
actually a few things
I'm
I've
always
seen
like,
that,
I'm
which
always
is-
There's
looking, I'm
some
like,
stuff
how do I
behind
turn this
it,
thing off? And I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
All you can do is have the
Unplug it.
display turn off, or
Oh.
Yeah.
yeah. So
There's
that's
plenty of stuff
unusual.
like that's
Yeah.
pretty low power consumption.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's just designed to just be left on.
Yeah.
They know you don't really need to turn it off, and that's the trick with this thing. There's plenty of stuff that you probably should turn off, but it depends on the design, just like everything, right?
Yeah.
So like high power tube amplifiers where it's two output, I would definitely turn those off when you're not
Anything
using them.
higher power.
Yeah.
Anything that's power amp. Anything
Right.
with the word power in it should tell you
But-
something.
There's stuff that has tubes in it, and the tubes could have a super duper high long
line
life.
level's no problem.
And it doesn't really matter. So it depends on
Usually.
design, just like everything, right?
Yeah,
But
usually-
generally speaking, if it
Usually
has
line
tubes.
level gear, just preamplifier stuff like that, the tubes are rated for like in hours, like 5 or 10,000 hours usually is the rating. So you divide that by 24 and it comes out to a point where at some point when it fails, it's due for new tubes anyway.
Well, and they're
you know?
probably like $10, not like $500 tubes.
Yeah.
So it's
And
not
when they
too
do
bad.
fail, they're small tubes and there's not a lot of power there.
Yeah.
When things go real wrong, they don't, draw 20 amps out of they're way smaller power supplies. So even
Yeah.
when those tubes don't go bad, they usually go bad slowly over time.
Right.
And the sound just degrades. And, sometimes they get microphonic and you tap on a table or you tap on it. But there's all kinds of failure modes with tubes we don't need to get into. But anyway, the bottom line is that, I'd say if you know you're going to listen, particularly on a regular basis, leave the stuff on. Or at least think enough ahead to turn it on a good hour before you're going to go and have a listen, if you're worried about leaving it on, or if you can't leave it on for whatever reason. Let it
Yeah.
warm up.
Most of the gear isn't too particular. You could leave it on. If it's solid state for the most part and reasonably well designed, you should have no concerns about leaving it on. But it wouldn't be unreasonable if you're concerned to see what the manufacturer
I wouldn't put
suggests.
blankets over it or cover it with your draperies
Well,
or
yeah.
anything. But,
If
but
you have the
that's
gear
common
stacked.
knowledge for
Yeah.
any electronics, But
Yeah.
it's something built in a normal aluminum chassis. It's high unlikely it's going to cause any kind of flame issue. There's just not enough. There's nothing in
very
there that's
unlikely.
going to make it through aluminum. It's not like a shotgun. Or
But some
anything.
people do have gear stacked. And so then the risk is there that your bottom gear is heating what's above it. So
Yeah,
it depends on
right.
the orientation,
Yeah.
the thermal design.
You can't use that to your advantage, though.
Some people do, yeah.
Because
Some
I know
people-
I put the DAC on top of the amp, so then it heats it up. 'Cause
Yeah.
I turn everything off. So
I used to always do that too at the decks. Put them on
because they
something
take a long time to
They
warm
tend to
up.
be slower to warm up because
Yeah.
they draw such little power anyway
Yeah.
when they're
Yeah.
idling.
Well, that seems to be a rough guide to whether or not you should leave your gear on. But as always, there's always a lot of indeterminate things. So if you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Let us know what you thought about it in the comments. And if you have any ideas for a future episode, we'd love to hear about it. Thanks.